everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I am Michelle Clark-Payne. I am the president of the Junior League of New Orleans, and I have the very distinct honor of welcoming you all here tonight. So thank you so much for being here. Before I begin, I'd like to recognize a few of the wonderful women's organizations that made tonight possible. So as I read out names, I'd ask you all to please stand. So we have 3 wonderful chapters from the links. So the New Orleans chapter, the Crescent City chapter, and the Pontchartrain chapters. If you guys can all please stand. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, ladies. Now I'm going to ask United Way of Southeast Louisiana's Women United chairwoman and individuals to stand. As well as the National Council of Jewish Women as well. And then also members of the Junior League of New Orleans. Thank you, ladies, for making tonight possible. But I want to take a quick moment of privilege to thank an individual who worked tirelessly behind the scenes to make tonight possible. And she is standing here at a computer, but please help me in thanking Leanne Moss for making this possible. She really didn't want me to do that, but thanks, Leanne. So these women's organizations came together because we know that women and families are the backbone of New Orleans. Yet they continue to face challenges such as economic inequity, mental health gaps, and public safety concerns. With this critical mayoral election approaching, we felt it was vital to bring these candidates together to share their solutions and ensure these issues are front and center of this election's conversation. Our hope is that this forum sparks meaningful conversations for each of us, informs voters, and inspires our members, partners, and neighbors to continue to work together beyond tonight. Our hope is that tonight empowers all of us. Empowers all of us to raise our voices, strengthen our knowledge, and join forces in really creating solutions. Advocacy is a journey, and tonight is an important step forward, ensuring women and families in New Orleans have a strong voice in decisions that affect their lives. Thank you for being here, and a special thank you to our candidates as well. We appreciate you guys being here. Now it's my honor to introduce Gina Swanson, who understood the importance of this dialogue and made time with us to be here tonight, guys, on her day off. So please help me in welcoming Gina to the stage.
All right. Y'all looking good. Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everyone, both here in the room and folks watching online. My name is Gina Swanson. I'll be your moderator tonight. Listen, when you bring the Junior League, the National Council of Jewish Women, and all 3 links chapters together, you know you're talking to a serious, engaged, informed electorate, right? We take our election seriously. We chronic voters up in here, okay. But, you know, I'm also glad to be here because they say after Labor Day is really when campaign season starts, though we have seen campaign season in a whole bunch of different forms. But this moment, we're together. After Labor Day, we can really get to the heart of the issues. We're honing in on everything that matters. Tonight, we are joined by 2 of our leading candidates in the race, and we are grateful for you being here. It is no small thing to offer yourself up for public service for the city's highest office when the stakes are so great and the scrutiny is so intense. We appreciate you being here. All right, let's go over a few rules before we start. Now, there was a list and a security guard and everything else, so I don't anticipate any type of disruptions. I'm looking around. If y'all trying to make a viral video, I'm going to give you a second. To gather your things, okay, and head on out, because that's not what we're doing tonight. Everybody good with that? All right, good. So each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to make opening statements, and then we will have a Q&A round, and each candidate will get 90 seconds for their response. If there is a need for a rebuttal, I'll determine that, and that would be 30 seconds. And then we have closing statements for 1 minute. We do have a time display and a bell once the time has finished. There you go. I know that, we're all here to listen to this discussion, and each candidate probably has some of their own people in here. We're not doing the cheering section, y'all. We're not doing it. We're going to wait till the end, and we'll give a round of applause for the discussion at the end. We got that part. Okay, good. So we will begin with opening statements. Each candidate, again, was set to get 2 minutes. The order was drawn in advance. Councilmember Thomas is not here, so we will begin with Councilmember Moreno, followed by State Senator Royce Duplessis. So, Councilmember Moreno, the stage is yours, 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can y'all hear me okay? Perfect. Thank you, Gina. And thank you to all of the groups who came together to have tonight's forum. And I'm so excited about tonight's forum because we're talking about women and women's issues and issues that impact us and our families. I know all of the groups because I've worked with all of the groups through my time in the Louisiana legislature and obviously on the city council as well. During my time in the Louisiana legislature, 2014 was able to pass transformative legislation to protect victims of domestic violence. Charmaine, Women United, I will never forget the work and the advocacy you did to get that done. That was a tough fight. We even took on the NRA and we won. The following year, 2015, moved forward to revamp how victims of sexual assault are treated. And then every single year, you all stood with me as I led efforts in the legislature for equal pay for women. Then on the city council, when we pushed forward to finally have the very first ever ordinance when it comes to sexual harassment. But really one of the most important pieces of legislation that you all helped with is the millage for early childhood care and education. In 2022, I was proud to lead that legislative item, and then ultimately it passed overwhelmingly through the city of New Orleans, and now we provide more than $20 million every year for free early childhood care and education for the children of our city. That's the type of transformative stuff that I'm about. You all know me, you know I take on tough fights, you know that I'm about getting the job done, and that is the type of person who you will have as your mayor. It is time to take our city in a new direction. It's time to get things done, and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be able to run for mayor because while some see that our city is broken, I actually see a city with so much opportunity. It's just about having the right leader to get the changes we need implemented and done on day one. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Duplessis.
Thank you all so much for organizing this forum tonight. I'm incredibly honored to be in this powerful room with all of these powerful women that are part of these powerful organizations. You can feel it, and I'm just honored to represent this community. I've been representing the city of New Orleans in the state legislature for the past 7 years, 4 years as a representative, 3 years as a state senator, but my experience in government actually started 20 years ago, and I want to talk to you all about that. And I want to talk to you all about why I chose to run for mayor after initially deciding that I was not going to run. I chose to run for mayor because there's some facts that are just indisputable. We've lost over 20,000 people in the city of New Orleans over the past 4 years. The city of New Orleans is currently facing a $100 million budget deficit. We have real challenges. We have real dysfunction. And that dysfunction is attributed to the leadership that is currently at City Hall. Now, my experience at City Hall began 20 years ago as chief of staff to a New Orleans city councilman in 2006. I was 23 years old at the time. I saw the problems up close and personal in post-Katrina New Orleans. And I feel like we're in a similar scenario right now in New Orleans, where we're trying to decide as a city, which direction are we going to go? What type of leadership are we going to embrace? A leadership style of collaboration and solutions, or a leadership style that's focused on your win equals my loss? I believe that we should be working together. And that's the kind of leader I've been in Baton Rouge, in a very hostile climate, working on behalf of women. I passed legislation, the Perinatal Mood and Anxiety Disorder Act, to call for screenings for new moms after giving birth for postpartum depression. I required insurance, mandated insurance for lactation services and nutrition counseling for new moms, always fighting for reproductive justice, always fighting against the hostile attacks upon women's rights and their ability to make their own decisions for their bodies. Because I'm not here tonight just as a senator or as someone looking to be mayor, but as a husband and as a father to a 7-year-old daughter.
Senator
Thank you all
Duplessis.
so much.
You set the stage. We talked about some of the issues in each of your opening statements. Our first question is to you, Senator Duplessis. It's about the population. I am from here, but I moved back in 2008 after Katrina. And sometime after that, the storyline was a great place to live, work, and play. I don't know if y'all remember that. We used to advertise live, work, and play. Young people come. Councilmember Thomas, before we get in, how about this? It's okay. I'll tell you what, before we get into our first question, please, Councilmember Thomas, you good? You can make your opening statements. You have 2 minutes. You need a second?
Well, first of all, you never walk in and disrupt the rhythm. And I can make my statement in closing or at some other time. Go ahead,
You can make it now. We haven't gotten any questions.
Good, guys,
Perfect.
coming from another forum where actually my family was, my kids are so interested in resiliency and what we deal with water and our natural topography. So they were all over there at the Ashe Cultural Center because that forum was about how are we going to live with the rising utility costs, how are we going to live with saltwater intrusion. And so I didn't want to walk out on them because one of them, Willow, they're studying that in school right now. So I stayed there, not to disrespect this group, but I rushed over here to be here. I'm Oliver Thomas, guys. I'm running for mayor. My theme is a city that works for us. And like my wife said when we were talking one night, she said, everybody wants to know if they can have a seat at the table. Well, the New Orleans, you're not going to worry about having a seat at the table when you build a new table. We're going to build a new table because the old table isn't working. In the 14 years I was out of office, when I came back, while so many others were still elected, I wondered what I came back to. I saw a city when services worked. I saw a city where you didn't just show up for the cameras, but we used to be in City Hall till 10, 11 o'clock at night. I saw a city where even if you didn't like someone, that you still got in the meeting, got in the room and worked with them. So I want to be the kind of mayor, no revenge tour, nothing against anybody who didn't support me, but a city that works for all of us. I love y'all.
All right. Now we can get into the first question. And Senator Duplessis, the first question is to you. Not too long ago, it was live, work, and play, enticing all young people to come and, come to New Orleans. But just recently, the census shows that our population has declined by at least 4% since 2020, the steepest decline of any other metro area. I teach a class at Loyola, and one of my colleagues said today, yeah, the parades are nice, but I need a job. That's right. Okay, so as mayor, what would you do to reverse population loss and attract working-age residents to the city, including keeping the residents who are already here? 90 seconds, the question's to you.
There's no greater measurement of how well a city is doing than looking at population gain or loss, period, point blank. At the core of it is affordability. We get up and go to work every day because we have bills to pay. Some of us have the luxury of doing things that we're super passionate about, and things that, that we can just do because we want to do, but most of us have to work because we got bills to pay. And when people are leaving a city, it's because it's become unaffordable. And when the leadership hasn't sold them any real vision that it's going to get better, people pack up their bags. So the first thing that we have to do is address the affordability crisis with housing. My plan is to develop over the course of 10 years, 40,000 affordable units. 40,000 affordable units. Currently, we have 20,000 blighted lots in the city of New Orleans, and we have 20,000 vacant properties in the city of New Orleans. We did 80,000 after Katrina. It can be done. Is it ambitious? Is it difficult? Absolutely, but we got to set big goals. We also need to be serious about economic opportunities, better jobs beyond just tourism. We love tourism. We want to protect and promote it. It's nice when you get a Super Bowl every 15 years, but that's not going to sustain the people to keep us here. So we have to be bold with economic opportunity. I think the Bio District presents an incredible opportunity to invest more in our healthcare industry and bio-innovation, but we got to get Charity Hospital redeveloped. I also think the Port of New Orleans, the expansion project down in St. Bernard Parish, presents a real economic opportunity for more jobs, particularly in the area of New Orleans East. So those are some areas, but it's at the core is affordability.
Councilmember Moreno, the question is to you. What would you do to reverse population loss and keep people here who are already here?
Thank you, Gina. That's a great question. And people are leaving the city of New Orleans because, honestly, it's just too hard to live in the city of New Orleans for many people. I can tell you that my stepdaughter, as a young person, she was one of the people who just looked at New Orleans as she tried to start her young family on whether or not that she was going to be able to really thrive and her family really thrive in the city of New Orleans. And that's heartbreaking. And we are now the 5th fastest shrinking area population-wise in the country right now. That's where we're at. And so the way you reverse that is really twofold. One, you make it easier to live in the city of New Orleans. And one of the ways you do that is by making sure that we have the right basic services. I had someone tell me at a meet and greet one time, she said, you know, Helena, the city of New Orleans is a way of ruining your day before your day even starts. And I'm like, wait, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, you know, I get my kids in the car, we go to work and go to school, and all of a sudden you're driving and you have this construction project that just popped up out of nowhere on the road. And then you take a detour and then the traffic lights don't work. And so now everybody's late and now everybody's frustrated, and you didn't do anything wrong, but the city of New Orleans didn't get the basic services right. And I know we can get basic services right because we got it done during Super Bowl. At the directive of the mayor, all city departments worked collaboratively in coordination with our state partners to get the job done, and the job got done. But when I'm mayor, that's not just going to happen when there's a Super Bowl coming. That's going to happen all the time because that's what you all, the people of New Orleans, deserve. So that's first, basic services. I'll get to number 2 another time. Another question.
Reversing population loss.
Well, first of all, you know we have space. In the 60s, we had 620,000 people. We're down to 350,000 now, so we got room for a lot more people. It's really not rocket science. If I'm paying for 2 a day trash pickup, at least pick it up on the one day, right? Then people would be more inspired. If I've applied for a permit and I'm in good standing each time I open my business, then why don't you give me a provisional permit, right? I've checked all the boxes. If I got 1 or 2 boxes left to check, give me my provisional permit so I can start hiring people and paying taxes. Other cities do it. If you build me a new street, don't come back a few days later and put a hole in the new street, and then I got to wait another year for you to come back and fill the hole, and I waited 20 years for you to do the new street. If you're going to be, your resume says you're a great electrician, don't be over the plumbing department, right? We want the plumber over the plumbing department. We want the electrician to run the electrician. We want people with expertise and subject knowledge in the best positions. And then breaking news just between us guys, I remember when we used to be at City Hall till 10 or 10:30 at night, right? Because New Orleans didn't have part-time problems. Don't just show up when the cameras are there and leave when it's time to do the work, right? Get in the room with people that you don't like. Let's work on systems. And then the 9.5 years I worked for the engineering firm, I was over there, a portfolio from Mobile. Let's have performance plans.
Thank you, Councilmember, for the breaking news. I appreciate you.
Performance plans.
With the breaking news. We're going to move along. Our next question, population, that was our first issue. Our next issue, economics. The United Way of Southeast Louisiana's 2025 Asset Limited Income Constrained Employed Report. Those are Alice families. It shows that 52% of New Orleans households are at below the basic cost of living. What that tells me is that people are working to survive, but nobody can thrive. And so what are your top 2 actions? We're starting with Councilmember Moreno. What are your top 2 actions you would take as mayor to reduce poverty and create upward mobility for all residents? Specific things.
I'm so glad because now I can answer the second part of that question I was talking about. So really, it's about creating opportunities and finding ways to create opportunities to provide high wages to people. So first, let's start with talking about what's happening with economic development within the city. If you take a look at just the city's economic development department, it has now been dwindled down to just having 1.5 people working in that department. An executive director and a part-time employee. So do you think that that's actually enough to handle all of our economic development needs within the city, everything happening downtown with the bio district and with Charity Hospital, along with really focusing in on our small businesses, along with really focusing in on diversifying our economy and making sure that we keep young people here in our city And so the first action I would take is to boost up our economic development department to really prioritize our small businesses and our entrepreneurs, to make sure that young people with great ideas can have that access to capital to build their big ideas. That's how we diversify our economy. But then the other piece too that I would do immediately is create more workforce opportunities so that there could be a direct link between workforce programs and jobs within City Hall. For example, street maintenance program, we need to hire 100 people to make sure that we have a proper street maintenance program. Creating a program like we had many years ago that would train individuals and upon completion of that training have a job at DPW, a high-paying job, that's a real solution.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas, top 2 actions as mayor to reduce poverty and create upward mobility.
Well, the first thing, that was easy. You don't look at the rest of the city as extra. We're not just a sliver by the river. We're not just the riverfront. We're not just Poydras. Let's take advantage of the other natural assets, right? Ecotourism is one of the fastest growing economic opportunities in the world. We have the largest wildlife refuge in North America, 340 bird species. If New Jersey can be the birding capital, why can't we create $1 million opportunity? We have 340 species that migrate here. So let's expand. Let's go where Bayou Sauvage is. We have 2 of the busiest waterways in North America, the intercoastal and the industrial. They feed the 33-state tributary system. Stevie Wonder knows our assets, and we don't seem to know them, right? So let's make sure we're incentivizing growth. It is easy downtown. The Biomedical Research Center, that board can take care of that board. The DDD can take care of that. French Quarter, they can take care of that board. But let's have an Office of Economic Development in parts of Gentilly and New Orleans East, where we can take advantage of those assets. This ain't rocket science. You just have to have the will to want to say, everybody all over the footprint of this city matters. They're not extra. They're New Orleanians, and they're opportunity.
Senator Duplessis, what 2 actions would you take as mayor to reduce poverty and create upward mobility?
So the question started with the Alice report. So I'm going to go back to that and just thank those organizations for putting together that incredible report. It highlights that people might be above the federal poverty guidelines, but they're still struggling. Folks ain't making it, right? So we disregard these people. I'm going to center women. That's what we're going to do. The way that we do that is that we create universal pre-K, 0 to 3. That is an economic driver. That is the right thing to do. That is something that the city has to get serious about. We can't wait on the federal government. We can't wait on the state. We as a city can go further than the millage and create a program that provides universal access to quality early child care, because there are too many kids that don't have access to it. So that to me is the greatest way we can lift families out of poverty, because then mothers can go to work. That is crucial. That's a crucial link. Earlier, I talked about housing and affordability. That's another crucial component to getting folks up out of poverty. I talked about my plan to develop 40,000 units. The other piece to everything that we're struggling with right now is the cost of homeowners insurance. The city, again, can't wait on the state. So whether you're a homeowner or whether you're a renter, I believe the city needs to stand up its own fortified roof program with the goal of fortifying 25% of homes in the state of in the city of New Orleans. That will directly impact. It's the quickest way we can lower homeowners insurance rates, and that's a direct impact on our overall poverty and living situation for families in New Orleans.
Next question is actually on housing. It starts with Councilmember Thomas. As recently as 2022, median rent consumed 36% of family income, and 15% of women-headed households own homes. How will your administration address housing affordability, especially for single-parent households? And before you answer that, I just want to add this part, because we have seen the okey doke. We have seen Brown's Dairy. We have seen housing that was supposed to be designated for affordable housing, but then it turned into something else. Mm-hmm. And so, what safeguards are there for affordable housing? How will you address housing affordability and make sure that people are able to access this housing?
Guys, go to otforus.com. You're going to hear a lot of things that you're hearing tonight. So everybody's kind of catching on, right? Which is good. We want to help each other. We want to educate each other. We talked about women. If women are leading the way, women in Louisiana shouldn't be making 49 cents on every dollar. We have to find a way so that the leaders of those households can earn, have the kind of equity and parity that everyone else does. Then 10,000, my plan, if you go to otfirst.com, you hear all those other things you're hearing, it's doable. Let's do what the experts used to do. Let's bring a Ross Precho back to the table. Let's bring a Fred Johnson back to the table, a Wilbur Thomas. Let's do what the Morrill administration did in the middle 90s to 2002 when home ownership went over 41% for the first time in decades. It's really not rocket science. Remember the Holy Ghost Initiative? What about reprogramming CBDG funds to deal with soft seconds? What about dealing with essential personnel and critical personnel, teachers and police officers, where we can deal with renters and landlords and say, we can work with the state so that we can raise your homestead exemption, which would lower your costs 20%, which would make that affordable. Now, the insurance piece, that's a tricky piece. The state tried to put 30 or 40 million on the side, and it wasn't enough. So in the city budget, right, that's going to be constrained with a potential $70 million deficit with millions of dollars of charter-related services. We're going to have to be creative. I'm going to have to get in the room with Royce in the Senate, in the room with other folk, and we're going to have to come up with creative ways because I don't want to keep funding programs and then I'm elected and y'all say, Oliver, where's the money?
Thank you. Senator Duplessis, how will your administration address housing affordability, especially for single-parent households? Is that your mic?
All right. So yeah, I mentioned I started working at City Hall 20 years ago. That's when I met Councilman Thomas. I learned a lot from him during that time. I'm still working to be as good on a mic as he is. But building on what I was saying earlier about housing, a lot of things that we need to do. The first thing that I'm going to do is create a chief housing officer. I'm going to say that again, a chief housing officer. We have Nora, we have Hano, we have Finance New Orleans. We have all these different agencies, and we even have an Office of Community Development within the city. We need a person that reports directly to the mayor that coordinates all of the different housing agencies so we can be clear about getting down to the bottom of solving the housing crisis in the city of New Orleans. Now, I was very public in my support for the charter change that we put 2% of the city's budget towards affordable housing. That's going to yield about $17 million roughly that we are going to be expected to try to leverage more affordable housing for the city of New Orleans. That's a great start. That's a great start. And I think having a chief housing officer to be able to work with the advisory committee that's going to be there for the administration of the new affordable housing fund will help us get on path to overcome some of the dysfunction that has plagued City Hall for the past 4 to 8 years.
Thank you. Councilmember Moreno, housing. How would your administration address housing affordability, especially for single-parent households?
Thank you. So it's been really interesting to study what other cities have done to really increase their affordable housing stock. And one of the things that another city has done is that they started to look at the public properties that they had and no longer were utilizing. And Austin was really able to use those public properties they were no longer using and transform those with third-party help to affordable housing units. And so we have the opportunity to do that as well here in the city of New Orleans. We have more than 80 structures right now, 80 buildings that are empty that the city owns, doing nothing with. We have more than 300 parcels of land that the city isn't doing anything with. So I would take all of these properties and actually move them under the New Orleans Building Corporation, which is kind of a pseudo in-government, out-government group here in New Orleans that helps us with complex real estate deals and help us to put these buildings that we own, these pieces of properties that we own, back into commerce. And the best thing that we can do with those buildings and that property is make them into affordable housing. And then the other piece too is obviously dealing with the insurance issue that we're dealing with. So to be creative on that, one of the ways that we could potentially do the fortified roofs is actually to provide a property tax exemption for anyone who's able to get a fortified roof. And obviously with that, we would need some help in the legislature to get it done. But it's creative ways to try to figure out how do we deal with this issue. But if we cluster fortified roofs in different neighborhoods, you'll bring the whole cost of insurance in a full neighborhood down.
Thank you. We're moving on. Our next topic, health and safety. We will start with Senator Duplessis. I know we're not talking about race, but it's in the question, y'all. Okay, so the 2024 status of women in New Orleans shows a persistent racial disparity when it comes to health outcomes. Federal Medicaid cuts also reduce coverage. How will you work with state and federal partners to protect access to care and reduce health disparities? Senator Duplessis, 90 seconds.
Well, the first thing is that we can't be afraid to talk about race. We have to talk about it because race is real. And the moment we try to not talk about it, we do ourselves a disservice. That's very harmful. So we're going to talk about race. And we're going to talk about the racial disparities of how 1 out of 4, 40% of black women are more likely to suffer in childbirth and postpartum issues than other races. These are real things that I've been working on since I've been in the legislature. I talked about the legislation that I passed. I was very proud of this bill, working with a group of advocates to require there be screenings for perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, otherwise known as postpartum depression. Again, my legislation to require and mandate insurance coverage for nutrition and lactation services for new moms. Always centering moms, I believe that the health of the child is directly related to the health of the mom. There's intergenerational trauma that gets passed on from mothers who grow up in poverty and then pass on that trauma to their children. Now, I was grateful when Governor John Bel Edwards expanded Medicaid back in 2016, and I was even more grateful when Governor Jeff Landry didn't fight to overturn it like I thought he would have, or repeal it. So, you know, whoever is governor or whoever is president, we have to work with them to ensure that the services and the coverage is in place, especially when it comes to health care, especially when it comes to health care for women. And we have to be able to talk about the disparities and address them head on.
Councilmember Moreno. Persistent racial health disparities. How will you work with state and federal partners to protect access to care and reduce said disparities? 90 seconds.
One of the most important and impactful things that I worked with the Cantrell administration on, and particularly with the health department, is that we are a city, the only one in the state, that created a program where we partner with our hospitals and we check on every new mother in the city of New Orleans. After mom has the baby, trained professionals go and do a home check, make sure baby's good, make sure mom is good. And this is really something that is transformational and something that we worked in coordination and collaboration with the health department to make sure that the budgeting was right and we got it done because it is that important. And not only is it obviously beneficial for the health of mom and health of the baby, but it's actually a life-saving measure that we took as well. Because there are times, obviously, where there are some significant mental health issues that pop up. There are some significant health issues that arise that wouldn't have been found without this particular program. So as mayor, I would continue to support that. But the other big piece, too, that is so critical here in the city of New Orleans is we have to support our New Orleans East Hospital and ensure that the New Orleans East Hospital can boost their maternity care that they are providing and do all possible to work with our state stakeholders and with our federal stakeholders to get the level of funding and resources they need. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas. Persistent racial health disparities. How will you work with state and federal partners to protect access to care and reduce those disparities?
Well, this is a doozy. We don't end up being a healthy city or a city that works unless we address this. You cannot have a third of your population that lives at or below the poverty level and be a healthy city. You cannot have your largest population, African American men and women, and flip between St. Louis and Detroit when you talk about socioeconomic issues that affect them economically in terms of education and health. You cannot have black children be poorer post-Katrina than they were pre-Katrina. You can't highlight and honor black women for startup, but 6 months later they don't have resources to stay up. You can't take a look at families, and 68% of those families now for black children don't have a male or female head of household. You can't have a city where 69% of your violent juvenile offenders are functionally illiterate. You can't vote against contracts for African American men and women and say that you want parity for them economically. This has to, look, we can just say all we want, but if our largest demographic and especially black women continue to represent the poorest in the Alice Report, which I'll give platform to as the host of the Good Morning Show. And if you look at the data center report, Ray Charles can go to a map and tell you the last 60 or 40 years where disparaged communities have been under-resourced or not resourced at all. So I got back in office because I'm looking at the same map that was there 40 years ago.
Thank you. Now we went to Ray Charles, we Stevie Wonder, we got Ray Charles next. Let's see who next. All right. This issue, workforce development and child care. This question is going to start with Councilmember Moreno. 82.5% of women with children under 6 are in the workforce, but child care remains a major barrier. The question is, what steps would you take to expand affordable child care, especially for parents working nights and weekends in the hospitality industry, such a huge component of our economy? 90 seconds.
Thank you. First, we need to start by leading by example, and that is that City Hall should have additional opportunities and access for childcare. So as we started to take a look at this, myself and Councilwoman Leslie Harris, one of the main parts that we started to look at is, let's see if we can start with our first responders. Starting with our first responders, and we began working with Chief Kirkpatrick, because this can also be a very strong tool toward recruitment. If you are providing free childcare, particularly for our officers and our first responders who are working overnight, this can be a game changer. That could be the key thing that makes somebody choose New Orleans over some other city to become a first responder and to boost our numbers there. So one is leading by example, and we're currently working on that program, myself, Councilwoman Leslie Harris, and Chief Kirkpatrick, and I would move that and implement that forward when I become mayor. But the other piece too is obviously on the hospitality industry, as the question reflects. We have to work very closely with New Orleans and Company and with our hospitality leaders to make that a reality. If myself as mayor at City Hall is making it a reality, well then our industry leaders in tourism should make it a reality as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Thomas.
Every child, if you go to otfirst.com, you see part of my plan has been for the last several months. Every child ought to have a smart, strong start. Literacy is important. If that child, by the time the child is 3 or 4 years old, if they're not proficient, if they're not anywhere near grade level, then all of your data from crime to homelessness, to all of the social ills will happen. I would like us to do like I do now. I'm the only elected official with an after-school program. We do mentoring. Let's make sure that every school has after-school and tutoring programs. We talk about city spaces for housing. There are enough vacant public schools and enough vacant public properties that if we could underwrite the cost for a child care provider that doesn't have to provide the building but bring their expertise to the space, it makes it a lot more affordable to them. But a lot of this stuff isn't new. Some people in this room may remember the 1999 or 2000 initiative where the administration worked with public spaces and providers, where the Drydes YMCA and other healthcare providers brought their services downtown to deal with municipal and private employees. I don't know why a lot of stuff that worked went away, but I'm back.
All right. Senator Duplessis, what steps would you take to expand affordable childcare, especially for our hospitality industry workers?
So I believe it was in one of my opening questions at the very beginning. I talked about one of my priorities in what I call my opportunity agenda. I don't want to call it a platform, but it's an opportunity agenda, is to create a program that is a universal pre-K-3 program. But that's not where it stops. Education, early childhood education, and early childhood development is workforce development, is economic development. For every dollar that we invest into early childhood development, we get that back tenfold. I mean, the reward is limitless. But in terms of the barriers that exist, look, I grew up in a house where I had 3 brothers, and I had one older brother who was like 11 years my senior. And after my mom had me, I was the 3rd of 4 boys. She started working at the post office, and she started there working nights. And I remember it was just my brother who he was basically our caretaker. Eventually, we ended up on the playground at Nord, and thankfully, my dad ended up getting a part-time job at Nord where he would cut the grass and maintain the lights and all of those things. But had we not had those systems in place, there's no telling where me and my brothers would have ended up. But Every child deserves that opportunity. So it doesn't just stop with early childhood education. We also have to look at more investment into recreation for our young people, literacy programs for our young people, and job opportunities for our young people. Because let me tell y'all, these kids, when they get to 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, a lot of them are taking care of themselves.
Thank
and
you.
they need opportunities so they don't go out here and breaking cars.
Moving on to the city budget. Heard any news there recently? The mayor crafts the city budget, which sets priorities for every department. This question is to Councilmember Thomas. If elected, what top 3 priorities would you fully fund in your first proposed budget and why? But what we really want to know is what we're going to do about this $100 million deficit as well. 90 seconds.
I'm on the budget committee. In the last committee meeting, it was a potential $70 million budget deficit. So everybody's talking about it, but if we can't deal with a $70 million deficit in a $1.8 billion budget, we got the wrong kind of mathematicians and accountants at City Hall. Now, some things will be missed, but if in a $1.8 billion budget, I'm not that alarmed about $70 million. Plus, there are a couple of state laws and mandates that if they could potentially put $16 to $20 million deficit on us, and there are other issues that if we can deal with those, that'll lessen the budget. So, we can talk budget myths versus budget realities, but we can deal with $70 million or even $100 million in a $1.8 billion. If we can't, all of us need to get out of here. Now, the city budget was $500 and so million pre-Katrina with 503,000 people. The Landry administration, I think, bloated the budget by another $200 or so million with 140 or 50,000 people. Now, what I don't understand is how we can have a $1.8 billion budget with 350,000 people without the delivery of services. That's why when I talk about performance plans and benchmarks, what are the industry standards? What does San Diego, Nashville, and Richmond do? How do they deal with a population consistent with ours with a smaller budget, but in many cases are comparable budget, but able to deliver services? So those are the kind of things that I want to see and have the best people, most efficient people running those departments. Garbage contracts are 2.5 to 3 times more with only one day pickup. It doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you, Councilmember. Senator Duplessis, the budget sets the priority, the mayor sets the priority for the budget. If elected, what are your priorities in the budget and how do you deal with the deficit?
The mayor sets the priorities, but the city charter lays out 3 responsibilities for the city council: zoning, the regulation of energy, and passing the budget. The legislative body at the state level, at the federal level, and yes, at the local level is responsible for the budget. So, Councilmember Thomas made some good points that I actually agree with. He said he doesn't understand, how we get to this point. I agree. I completely agree. And that's a big part of the reason why I chose to run for mayor. Because the city council is the body that has to explain how we have a $100 million deficit. And let me be clear, I've talked to experts, I've talked to some budget experts in the past, people like Cary Grant, people who know this stuff like the back of their head. They said it could be up to $120 million. And I don't think it's gonna be an easy thing, because the first thing people are gonna be talking about is furloughs. People are gonna be talking about cutting services. We have a $1.8 billion budget, yes, a bloated budget, but our services have not increased as a result. So the first thing that I'm going to do after I hire the best CAO in the country and the best budget finance director in the country is to do a hard audit within 60 days to find out where the money is being wasted, legacy contracts that need to go, and how we can do a better job budgeting and forecasting for every 3 to 5 years, which this city has not done. And that's the city council's responsibility. And if we're going to have real conversation, we need to be able to call that out.
Councilmember Moreno, setting the budget priority, if elected, what would be your top 3 priorities that you would fund, and what about the deficit that we're facing?
Councilmember Thomas said something, and it's really about budget myths, and that's what we need to really get to the bottom of, because as you all probably recall, when we were going through the budget process, all was all right, the CAO was like, all is good, and then we get done with the budget process and get into this year, and all of a sudden, the Department of Finance says, oh no, we're not good. And the CAO was still saying, no, we're good. So y'all, what's going on? Even our budget chair, he was like, wait. You guys are giving us all conflicting information. So first and foremost, no doubt about it, you need to come in with forensic auditors and figure out what is the truth about what's happening with the city budget. And then after that, you have to set your priorities. And my priorities are going to be, first, economic development, no doubt about it, boosting that department, making sure we're taking care of our small businesses and making sure that department is focusing on areas like New Orleans East. And then number two, you really need to take a hard look at DPW, because we're actually outsourcing, contracting out things that we shouldn't be contracting out, and not doing in-house things we should be doing in-house. Like what we should be doing in-house is all of our pothole repairs. Instead, we contract all of that out. That's super expensive. And then the third piece is we have to fix safety and permits. It has to be fixed. That is one of the biggest barriers to development, business, just getting anything done in the city of New Orleans. And so that would also be one of my top priorities.
Thank you. We're on to city services. Everybody likes to talk about street repair, drainage, sanitation, impact all residents, especially in low elevation neighborhoods. Senator Duplessis, the question is to you. How will you ensure equitable, reliable delivery of core services across the city? And I'm gonna add this, it's not on the script. Are we gonna bring back twice a week trash pickup? All right, go ahead. 90 seconds, go ahead. That's a yes or no. You can get rid of that.
Yes, bring it back twice a week. Trash pickup will be
that.
a top goal for the Duplessis administration. Yes, it will be. Y'all can film that. So first of all, Crystal tells me that I'm terrible at analogies, but I'm gonna give one a shot. She says I need to just stop because I'm not that good with analogies. But I often talk about like a garden. I tried to set up a garden for my daughter in the backyard, and we set it up. It was really nice at first, and then I went like 2 weeks, and I just thought it was gonna be okay, and I came back, and it looked horrible, right? So the whole point is that government management, City Hall in particular, it requires urgent and constant leadership, right? You have to be there, you have to be present, you have to be in the guts of City Hall. I mean, you can't just walk through safety and permits the first week and then come back middle of the term when things are all dysfunctional. You have to be there constantly. Safety and permits, I'm gonna start there, because that is probably the #1 department that we have to streamline and make more efficient. We have 7 different divisions in safety and permits. You have electrical, you have mechanical, you have zoning, and so on and so forth. Just within zoning alone, you have 6 different subdivisions in there. We have to streamline it and cross-train employees so that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing. We have to embrace the fact that we're in 2025 and not in 1995. We have to move beyond paper, so if one employee isn't there that day, you have a customer service type of experience where a case manager can walk you through the entire process. We don't have that right now, and we can get there. And I love the employees at City Hall. They go there every day and do their best. We're going to value them and make them feel proud to serve the city of New Orleans.
Councilmember Moreno, city services, street repair, drainage, sanitation. How will you ensure equitable, reliable delivery of core services across the city? And would you bring back twice a week trash pickup?
The Gina question, yes. Yes to the Gina question. First, let's talk about our streets. I mean, I think that's what we get, all of us up here, probably the most complaints about. And it's not that we're hitting the potholes. I blame the potholes. I think the potholes are hitting us. I'm just saying. So first, let's get a real street maintenance program going. I don't know if y'all are aware, but we are down to 1 pothole crew for 1,500 miles of streets in the city. 1 pothole crew. So I always say this. Do you know why Jefferson Parish has streets 10 times better than us? Because they have 10 times the number of people working on street maintenance. So that's one of the first things that I would do, is start hiring up at the Department of Public Works and create a workforce training program. So we are training individuals that as soon as they are finished with their training program, they can go directly to DPW and get a high-paying job. And I also want to remind you all that at City Hall, we cannot pay any less than $15 an hour. And I get it that that is not a super high wage, but we cannot pay any less than a living wage. And then the other piece too is just, it has to do with every department as far as troubleshooting the basic services in our city. We have to have urgent coordination and collaboration and hold departments accountable. And as mayor, that is certainly something that I will do, and I'll demand the weekly meetings troubleshooting all of our biggest issues so that we can finally get those things moving and resolved Super Bowl style.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be quick in 90 seconds to walk you guys through this. The Landry administration programmed much more of the federal funds, infrastructure funds, than they had capacity to do, right? So we programmed about 6% of it. Our city, when you talk about dealing with $1.2 billion in infrastructure funds, we didn't have the construction capacity in terms of local teams to be able to do that work, right? So then the Cantrell administration, in their brilliance, without the capacity to perform that level of work, programmed about 14 to 20% of it with not enough capacity. So what happened was you had some contractors who had, one contractor had $45 million worth of work. Well, they would start on this street, then work enough to build and go to the next street, then work enough to build and go to the next street. Another thing that has to happen in public works, program managers. Remember the big newspaper issue when they did Napoleon under the Landry administration, and they did the big drainage project, and then they came back and they had the article that they paved over the drains? Well, Oliver Thomas is going to have a program manager to say, no, stop, no concrete drain. No, stop, no concrete drainage. So let's talk about drainage and sewage and water board. Institutional knowledge matters. The business community defeated a drainage millage in 1990. Jim Singleton and Dorothy Taylor told me to read that stuff because it may be important in the future. That drainage renewal, which wasn't a new tax, would have yielded $155 million. You know how much work we could have bonded with $155 million? Let's stop.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
And the trash pickup. I saw the thumbs up. That's a yes for the trash pickup?
Man, trash pickup going to be 2.5 times a week.
Okay, thank you. All right, our next question on climate change. All right, climate change and disaster response. This question is to Councilmember Moreno. Extreme precipitation events are increasing and climate impacts hit low-income families the hardest. What steps would you take to expand household disaster readiness, like evacuation planning and backup power, so vulnerable residents aren't left without options? Before you answer that, I just heard an interview with one of our emergency leaders talking about the rapid intensification of storms and how you don't have 72 hours now, you may have to have a 36-hour type of evacuation plan. What would you do as mayor so vulnerable residents are not left without options?
Great question. And first, once again, through work and collaboration with this administration and working with the health department, one of the key things that Dr. Avegno has done is really to work to identify who are the vulnerable folks within the city of New Orleans so that the city of New Orleans can go and help them. Also working to identify the independent living facilities for seniors, which, as you all recall, during Hurricane Ida, those are the locations that really suffered. I myself was out there with the health department when we saw landlords not care at all about what was happening with their residents and had the city really struggling to help people who were left behind and stuck in the heat. The other piece, too, is dealing with the heat, because you're right, Gina, the storms are happening so fast, not everyone can evacuate, and not everyone can potentially get out in time. So that is why I ensured that we move forward with the Community Lighthouse program to create centers throughout the city that even if the power grid goes out, you have batteries and solar panels that will light up these churches, soon to be, as I'm moving forward with now a utility docket on this, soon to be grocery stores, soon to be other centers. So there are places people can go to escape the heat, because that is how we lost people during Hurricane Ida. They were stuck in the heat for far too long with nowhere to go, and there were not enough generators to try to power enough centers around different neighborhoods.
Councilmember Thomas.
It's not just good enough to identify disparate communities. We have to go to those communities and resource them, help prepare them with their own personal emergency evacuation plans. Well, what are the routes? What is contraflow going to look like? Where can you go? Where is the lighthouse nearest to you? Maybe we should start working with schools and nonprofits that work in those neighborhoods. The other thing, climate change is a real thing. As someone who sat on the panel with the National League of Cities AIRS conference on climate change, we're dealing with not a finite source of water here. We're taking it for granted, right? So look at saltwater intrusion. On this planet, we got 1,386,000,000 cubic kilometers of water, period. Only 2.5% of it is fresh water. Most of it is below the Earth's surface. We can only access 0.5%. So while we're feeling the luxury of we having water here around us, if we're not smart about how do we live with Mother Nature, not concrete her, not push her around, not tell her where to go, and how do we set up emergency alert systems? it's not just tropical storms or hurricanes anymore. We have F3s and F4s, right? We have this other thing that they call rain bombs that are happening right now. So we have to work with our federal partners, National Weather Service, and develop systems to deal with how Mother Nature is exercising her power and will now.
Senator Duplessis, how would you expand household disaster readiness, like evacuation planning and backup power, so vulnerable residents are not left without options in an emergency?
I just want to start by saying that climate change is an existential threat to us as a city and as a region. So the planning that we would need to do at the local level, we really have to approach it in a more regional fashion, collaborating with Jefferson Parish, St. Tammany Parish, St. Bernard Parish, all of the surrounding parishes, and not just operate in a silo. We learned a lot from Hurricane Katrina. We learned a whole lot. Now, as we just marked the 20-year anniversary, there's a lot of remembrance, resolve, and renewal to not failing again. But we learned more, I believe, during Hurricane Ida. After that, I went and advocated and pushed for, we weren't able to get it through, but I went to push for any new development that relies upon low-income housing tax credits to house seniors or people that are on a fixed income, that they have the necessary backup generators in place, because we saw what happened to vulnerable populations when they went without power for several days on end. So we have to get stronger about that, and I think we can do a better job at the local level, even if we don't get support from the state, to make sure that local housing authorities and these housing developments that house our most vulnerable populations, that they have the necessary resources. The other piece is just communication and collaboration. I talked about the breakdown in local leadership, the crisis in local leadership we have in New Orleans. If our leadership can't get in the room, God forbid we have a hurricane come in the peak of hurricane season, how can we effectively communicate to plan to serve our citizens when our leadership isn't showing up to work with each other? And that's the other piece.
All right, those were our thoughtful response questions. We appreciate you taking the time, the 90 seconds to respond, and just kind of inform our electorate and audience here. Our next session is more rapid fire, so it's going to be a quick yes or no, and maybe if you need a sentence, a sentence of nuance if you need it. One sentence, okay? So we're going to just jump in. We're going to start, I guess, with Councilmember Thomas, but we can just go down the line. As mayor, would you commit to holding at least one town hall meeting each year in each district?
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember?
Yes, I would like to say so much more, but I'll go with yes.
Senator?
Definitely.
Okay, we're moving along. Would you expand, we're going to start with Councilmember Moreno, would you expand city-backed job training programs tied to high-growth industries like healthcare and green infrastructure?
Of course.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, moving along. Anybody have any context here? One sentence.
Already been doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean,
One sentence.
yeah.
Open it up.
Yeah, all of the kids who work for me.
Okay. We're going to start with Senator Duplessis. Do you support expanding use of city-owned land for affordable housing?
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes.
Councilmember Moreno.
And it's part of my plan.
All right, next question, Councilmember Thomas. Do you support implementing a stormwater management fee so all residents, including tax-exempt properties, contribute to drainage?
As long as it's fair and it doesn't place undue burden on too small a percentage of people, it has to be fair.
Councilmember Moreno.
Yes, making sure that our property owners our property tax paying owners aren't having to pay more and figuring out a way to roll the millage back. And then also at the same time, ensuring that the funding that comes in from that goes to a separate account that the city council,
Okay, now we've
can
got
have.
that
Okay, sorry.
two,
Yes,
three-
yes,
Historically,
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, the answer is
but, see, I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to put
get
that
one more?
straight.
one more sentence.
When you understand the history of this community, historically, 15% of the people have paid for most of the costs.
Okay.
So that has been the problem with getting more people to say we want to contribute.
Thank you,
So
Senator
moving
Duplessis.
forward, you have to spread it out.
Senator Duplessis, do you support implementing a stormwater management fee so all residents, including tax-exempt properties, contribute to drainage?
It's something that has to happen, yes, but it needs to be done fairly.
Okay, last question. Who I'm starting with? Where did I start? I mean, in this section, would you dedicate city funds to expand affordable child care options? Who did I start with the last time?
I think it's my turn.
It is.
Started with
Councilmember
me.
Moreno.
Yes.
Senator Duplessis.
Yes, that's part of my plan.
Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, with the child care providers at the table.
At the table. Okay. Now we have a little bit of a lightning response and reflect. This is actually our final question before we move into closing statements. And this actually speaks to the heart of civic engagement. We know what voter turnout was for our last mayoral race. Less than a third of people made it to the polls. No matter what happens here, we know the only endorsement that matters is the one that happens on election day. We are clear about that. As mayor, what is one new initiative you will champion to encourage residents' engagement and input in shaping your administration's decisions? Okay, I want you to know this is how it's going to work. You have 45 seconds to answer that question, and then after you answer, you have 20 seconds to reflect on or agree with something another candidate has said. We got that? 45 seconds to answer, and then another 20-second reflection. This question is going to start with Councilmember Thomas. I'll tell you again. What is one new initiative you will champion to encourage residents' engagement and input in shaping your administration's decisions?
I wrote several. I like to write, especially being host of the Good Morning Show. I read all these reports. Probably adept on most of the studies than most people combined because of the shows I had to. There's a piece that I wrote called Democracy by Subtraction, where the political class at some point doesn't worry about maximum participation because they know how to control the few people and chronic voters who vote right now. Within that piece I wrote that at some point American citizens were going to need a passport to get to D.C. I should have included town halls, and state capitals, because that's how far away government has gone. The closer government comes back to people, the more they'll be willing to participate. What I have heard from people in every corner of this community, from Monticello Street to Dubriel, from the lakefront to Sullen, is that they feel like City Hall and the elected officials don't work with them or for them.
I'm actually going to take a moment of privilege. Do you have a reflection you would like to offer?
Oh, absolutely.
Quickly.
Senator Duplessis gave me credit for learning from me. Man, you're a wonderful young man, and you've learned a lot. Absolutely.
Okay.
No, for true.
All right. Senator Duplessis, the question is to you. 45 seconds to respond and a 20-second reflection. As mayor, what is one new initiative you'll champion to encourage residents' engagement and input in shaping your administration's decisions?
Throughout the course of this campaign, I've said, and you will hear me continue to say, that I don't believe this is about reinventing the wheel. In large part, it's just about getting the wheel turning, right? But we haven't had that. So I led the process during the redistricting up in Baton Rouge, and it was brutal. But what you learn through voter apathy is that when people don't see their values reflected in their leadership, they tend to check out. So yes, we're going to do the town halls. We're going to do the engagement through all of the different digital platforms that are out there. But I think the most important thing that we can implement that I don't think exists now is performance outcomes as a way to have our public hold us accountable. So that's a transparency measure. And we set goals, we put them out there,
Thank you,
and
Senator.
then it gives the public a way to hold us accountable. That's
Thank
real
you.
engagement.
Any reflection here?
I just want to thank Councilmember Thomas again for teaching me so much. And I continue to learn every day. Thank you. I'm not the smartest in the room, I'll say that.
All right. Councilmember Helena Moreno, Councilmember Moreno, as mayor, one new initiative you will champion to encourage residents' engagement and input in shaping your administration's decision. Answer, and then you have a moment for reflection.
You got it. It would be additional communications with the media, with the public, transparency, because honestly, that's what we hear about all the time. that the city will be moving forward with something and people are like, wait, we didn't know this was happening. It's always we didn't know, we weren't aware. Even something as minor as construction projects, starting on certain streets. All of a sudden you're trying to back out your driveway and you're like, wait a second, what's this construction crew behind me? And how long is this going to last? So that would be the biggest key thing that I would do, is just constant communication and really shedding as much sunlight into City Hall as possible.
And a reflection on anything you've heard tonight.
I mean, I've just learned so much just from everybody, from both of the candidates who are here with me tonight, and really my reflection is that I'm just grateful to be here.
Thank you. We are moving into our portion for closing statements. We do appreciate your responses and reflections. When it comes to closing statements, each candidate will have 1 minute. The order is going to be reversed from opening statements. And so we're just going to start with my near side with Senator Duplessis, 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Gina, and thank you all for being here tonight. It shows that you care. Women have always led the way. Women have always led the way. Every race that I've run, women have helped lead my campaign. Women will be centered in my administration, because when I make decisions, I'm not only thinking about the smartest person in my life and the hardest working person in my life, my wife, but my 7-year-old daughter. That's the proudest responsibility I have in my life. I made the difficult decision in January not to run for mayor. But over 6 months, I watched this city, and I watched the direction that it was going. And I didn't see the promise that I felt like we deserved. So I jumped in this race because I believe that it's not how much you know, or how much you know the system, or how well you know the system, but how much you're willing to change the system. We need a new voice. We need a new perspective. We need new energy that can solve these problems.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much.
Councilmember Moreno, 1 minute to close.
Thank you. During my time on the New Orleans City Council for years, I have brought forward ideas and solutions to some of our city's problems, and I've been frustrated that so often, even pieces of legislation that I hope would be implemented just were not. And a couple years ago, I actually went to my husband and I said, I'm so frustrated. I see the solutions. I see what can be done. I see how we can move our city in a new direction, but it's just not being implemented. I asked Chris, I was like, honey, what if I decided to run for mayor? And thank God that my husband fully supported my decision and that my family fully supports my decision, because to be mayor is a sacrifice, because you have to put the people of New Orleans top. The people of New Orleans have to be your top priority, and you have to be a 24/7 mayor to be a good mayor. There are no days off. The people of New Orleans have to always be top of mind. And that is how I will be as your next mayor and move us in a new direction from day one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Thomas, 1 minute to close.
As we study the history of leadership and all the great leaders I've followed, leadership doesn't lay blame. They look at what the obstacles were and who were in the way, and they move those things out of the way, and they become the kind of leaders that move that troop, that city, that community, that nation, that country forward. I want to be that kind of leader. It's one of the reasons why I publicly offered twice open letters for a retreat, so that everyone could get in the same room. It's one of the reasons why years ago I envisioned the region. I was the first and only council member ever to hold regional meetings. We can point the fingers at a lot of people, but what my father told me to do, son, if you look in the mirror and challenge yourself to be the best you can be, then everybody else around you will be too. I'm Oliver Thomas. I need your vote. Let's change this city.
Thank you. Round of applause for our candidates. We certainly appreciate the candidates and your thoughtful participation. Everyone in the audience, everyone online, thank you for joining us. Remember, the election is October 11th. Early voting starts September 27th. And so I hope you'll stay engaged and informed and make your voice heard at the ballot box. Thank you for joining us. Have a great evening. But before we disperse, all of the organizational presidents who were involved in putting the night together, we have to get a picture. Everybody stay for a picture. Please make your way to the front for a photo.